Today we are going to talk about proportions. A proportion is an equation stating that two ratios are equivalent. A proportion is fair. So to be proportional, two quantities form a proportion. That means that our ratios are increasing or decreasing at the same rate, or they're multiplied or divided by the same number. So for example, we have 2 to 3 is proportional to 4 to 6. That's because they increase at the same rate. You multiply 2 by 2 to get 4, and you multiply 3 by 2 to get 6. So this is read 2 is to 3 as 4 is to 6. 2 is to 3 as 4 is to 6. So they're proportional because they increase or decrease at the same rate. They are fair. They have a proportional relationship. Okay, so let's take a look and see how we determine that. So are they a proportion? We have two ways to determine if they're proportional. The first way, it says, tell whether 6 to 4 and 8 to 12 form a proportion. So one way to do that is to simply write out your two ratios and look at both of them and think, how can I get from one ratio to the other? So for example, off the bat, I know that 4 times 3 is 12. For this ratio to be proportional to this ratio, though, the 8 must have the same relationship to 6 as 12 does to 4. So we ask ourselves, okay, is 6 times 3 8? No, it's not. Therefore, this is not proportional. If this was 6 times 3 is 18, then this ratio and this ratio would be proportional. But because they don't increase by the same thing or decrease at the same rate, then they are not proportional. All right, let's try another one together. It says, tell whether 1/2 and 5/10 form a proportion. So again, I'm just going to write out my two proportions and take a look and see, okay, I know that 1 times 5 gets me 5. So I ask myself, okay, does 2 times 5 equal 10? And sure enough, yes, in this case, it does. So these are proportional. So here, these match, so they form a proportion. They don't match here, so they're not proportional. We have two more examples here, 4 to 6 and 18 to 24. Again, just setting it up. It's important to note that it doesn't matter if you look at the numerators or the denominators to start you off. Either way works. We don't look diagonally here. We want to see if the numerator to numerator works and the denominator and denominator. So go ahead and take 1 second here and determine if these are proportional. They are not proportional. Can you explain why these are not proportional? Great. So to get from 6 to 24, we multiply by 4, but we do not multiply by 4 to get 4 to 18, so they're not proportional. One more this way. Why don't you give it a try? It says 10 to 6 and 5 to 3. Go ahead and determine if those are proportional for me. These are proportional. Can you go ahead and explain how you know that? Again, if we set up our problem, our two ratios, We go from 10 to 5 by dividing by 2. We also go from 6 to 3 by dividing by 2. So that works. All right, so that's one way. It's just taking a look at our numerators and denominators, see if they increase at the same rate. Now, there's another way to determine if two ratios are proportional, and that's by using cross products. So we set up our two ratios and have them equal to each other. Sometimes we put a little question mark over the top of that equal sign because we're not sure if they're proportional or not yet. So we take a look here. You use your cross products. So I multiply 2 and 6. 2 times 6 gets me 12. And then I look at 3 and 4. 3 times 4 is 12. Because the cross products have the same product, they are proportional. If these numbers didn't match, then they wouldn't be proportional. So let's go ahead and try here. We have the same problems as we did before, but we are going to try them with our cross products. So a calculator might be helpful for this piece. We've got 6 to 4 and 8 to 12, so I can write that equal sign with my question mark. I take a look here. 6 times 12 is 72. Again, if you need a calculator for this, you may use one. And then we've got 4 times 8, which is 32. So those do not match, and therefore they are not proportional. So here, remember, we take a look across. We look diagonally. This is called cross products. Let's do another one together. It says tell whether 1/2 and 5/10 form a proportion. 1/2 equals maybe 5/10. Again, I look across. 1 times 10 is 10. 5 times 2 is 10. These match, so they are proportional. All right, why don't you, using cross products, so I do want you to try cross products this time, can you go ahead and determine, we already know the answer, so why don't you prove that 4 to 6 and 18 to 24 are not proportional using our cross products method. So like I said, we already know they're not from our first page, but how do you prove that with our cross products method? So if I set that up, 18, 24, again, I can use my calculator if I want to or need to. Some of these bigger numbers you might want to. 4 times 24 is 96. 6 times 18 is 108. Those numbers are not the same, so they are not proportional. All right, one more like this, and then we've got a couple more examples. Again, we know that this is proportional from our first page, but I want you to go ahead and take a minute, try to prove that with our cross products method. How do we know these two ratios are proportional using our cross products method? Well, we've got, 10 to 6 and 5 to 3. I know that 10 times 3 is 10. 6 times 5 is, I am so sorry. 6 times 5 is 30, and 10 times 3 is also 30. Because they are the same, they are proportional. So there's one more type of problem that you will come across, and that is that word problem. So it says you swim your first 4 laps in 2.4 minutes. You complete 16 laps in 12 minutes. So sometimes we know that when you start off doing physical activity, maybe you are going faster and then you end up slowing down later, or maybe it's vice versa. So what we want to know, is your time fair? Is it consistent? Is it the same across your time, is it proportional? So we take this proportion and this proportion, and this ratio and this ratio, and see if they form a proportion. Now, we always start with our word ratio. What are we comparing? We compare laps to minutes here. We need to have our word ratio because we want to make sure that we are keeping everything organized. So now I go ahead and write my laps first on top, and then my minutes on the bottom. And then having that word ratio allows me to consistently take a look and say, okay, laps goes on top for my second ratio. And then I've got minutes. So again, I can use my cross products method, or I can just take a look at my numerators and my denominators. So here, for example, I know that 4 times 4 is 16. Now I need to ask myself, is 2.4 times 4 equal to 12? It's not. So they're not proportional. The other way you could do this is look at 4 times 12, which is 48, and 2.4 times 16, again, you can use your calculator, is 38.4. So these don't match. So we do not have a proportion here. Could you go ahead and figure out number 10? It says you read first 10 pages of a book in 25 minutes. You read 36 pages in 45 minutes. Is the number of pages read proportional to your time? So were you reading at a consistent pace the entire time? Go ahead and type your answer, proportional or not proportional, into the box and explain how you know.